In verse 3, early the next morning, Abraham got up and loaded his donkey. He took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God told him about. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and he saw the place in the distance. He said to his servants, "Stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you." So think about this. How does Abraham respond? Because we see Abraham's first response is just simply say, "Here I am, Lord." But then once he learns the horror of what he's supposed to do, here's his response. He has probably the worst night that any parent has ever had in their life. Early the next morning, which means that he somehow had to make it through the night of knowing and feeling that deep burden of what God has called him to do. He makes some morning preparations, and so he's gathering things, getting things ready for a trip, and he loads up the donkey with all the water and food and everything that he would need, and while he's pulling these things together, he's thinking, I'm going to have to sacrifice my son, Isaac. And he's getting the servants. He has to tell these servants, hey guys, we have to go. We've got to go make a sacrifice. And Abraham in the back of his mind is thinking, okay, I've got to sacrifice Isaac. And so he's making preparations. He's loading his donkey. He's telling his servants. And then he has to tell Isaac. He has to walk up and look his son in the eyes and tell him, we are going to go on a trip to make a sacrifice to the Lord. You want to talk about faith? You want to talk about hard conversations? You've got to cut the wood. He didn't know where he was going, and so he wanted to have the wood for the sacrifice there. This is the wood that was supposed to be burning his son's body. You want to talk about difficulty in faith? And then he traveled 3 days. Traveling 3 days with his servants, with a donkey, with the cut wood, traveling along. And when you look at this picture, and I was listening to my professor, James Allman from DTS, and he was saying, it's really great. Here you have emphatic language, and we can't miss it. Remember what Abraham says here. He says, we will depart, we will worship, we will return. It's not just like, hey, we're going to go up there and be back. He's saying emphatically, we will depart, we will worship, we will return. His faith was unshakable. Abraham didn't know why or how, but he trusted that somehow God would preserve Isaac's life. And how could he not? Abraham's faith in this was so remarkable as he's looking at what he's asked to do, that he would go through these difficult, painful steps. I'm not sure if there's been any more difficult thing asked of any person than what God did to Abraham here. How do you think you would respond? How do I think I would respond? I think Abraham's faith is a shining example, one we can learn from and grow from as we look at.